100 episodes of Focus Check. In that time, we've watched an entire industry transform.
I think I can summarize it in literally one sentence. We are all moving from being filmmakers to content creators. Like it or not.
And we finally got a chance to review Fujifilm's first cinema camera.
The image coming out of this camera is really beautiful. And I have to separate the image itself from what I'm gonna say next.
The GFX ETERNA 55, Our Honest Take. Episode 100 of Focus Check.
This is Focus Check, the weekly CineTech podcast.
Welcome to the 100th episode of CineD Focus Check podcast. Yay, we did it. Almost 2 years, Johnnie.
It's unbelievable. First of all, guys, I have to thank Nino for being so determined to execute and do.
To drag you to the studio almost every week with
absolutely
chains.
Yeah, I mean, it's very demanding. I don't know if you ever try to do podcast. The whole thing here is about consistency.
Yes.
It's kind of, you grow into this and you know, it's nice. It's really nice in so many ways, but it's very demanding. So first of all, it's really congratulations to you to being behind it.
It's only the two of us, or all of us, actually, the whole team.
That's right.
And also Felix is now, today we also have the kind of the godfather of the podcast, who is, well, he took care of the last, almost 80 episodes.
85 episodes, no?
For the first 20, we had Alex, and then you took over.
Exactly, yeah. I took over at episode 19, I think, was the first one, so yeah.
And thank you so much for this consistency also. So today we're gonna pick your brain too because you have seen everything, you've been there for every episode since 19, 20, whatever. And
wait, Nino,
so you have as many insights as us.
Wait, not so fast.
So for those of you who are listening to this, Johnnie is opening a bottle of wine.
Yeah, I think we all deserve it.
We can tell that he doesn't do this very often.
And you don't want to know what time it is in Austria right now. It's
morning.
It's morning time. I never did like
day drinking.
Exactly.
And a nice wine called Nino Negri. Somebody gave this to me a long time ago. I hope it's still good. Yeah.
Felix, where is your glass?
So let's cheer to this occasion. 100 episode is
you can take
pretty big milestone.
Take my glass.
So I did a bit of research, and it turned out that most podcasts don't go after 10 episodes.
Let's do this. Cheers for all of us, and thank you guys for following us. Without you, it would never happen. So thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So
wait, let's go into business and just tell the people what to expect first today.
Exactly. So today we'll talk a little. We do a little bit of reminiscing because it's not good. it's too early. So a little bit of reminiscing of the past 100 episodes. Just what worked, what we think we liked, our personal favorites, like the episodes we enjoyed, and the topics we enjoyed, the engagement we enjoyed with you guys, and exactly the stuff that really got a lot of attention and a lot of feedback and a lot of engagement from you guys. So it's really worth looking back. Now, I think it's fair to say that we've kind of evolved from something that really started as a purely news type weekly podcast to kind of, align also the two of us actually about what's happened over the last week in filmmaking technology. And it has evolved into something more of a reflective thing, right? More like kind of like categorizing things that we are sometimes only reporting about in a news context, and then also contextualizing it with the broader picture of where we are in this industry.
I think people need to know that although we see each other every day and we work from the office every day, there's so much going on in so many directions that sometimes we really need to align and talk about stuff. And here at the podcast, it's a really good opportunity to catch up with things that are happening. So that's
So I think we've really come. Like I said, it's a bit of a shift in tone, and we're more. I think it's fair to say in the last couple of months, it's fair to say that there are a lot of almost existential anxieties of modern cinematographers and camera people because of how technology is evolving. And I'm not just talking about gear, I'm also, of course, talking about AI. And we try to address this in a balanced manner, of course. So we just didn't realize, we realized that you didn't only want specs Like we realized that you really wanted to know how those specs and what's happening is actually mattering for your careers. I think that's one of the takeaways from me. Like I thought that people are more like, okay, I just want to know about this camera. What does it do? Blah, 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 blah. But I think everybody in this industry has moved away that because all the cameras and all the gear is so great now, the pure specs don't do anything anymore. It's more like how can I use this tool to kind of advance my career and become a better filmmaker if I use it. So in general, there's a bit of a shift away from purely, when I compare to something like 10 years ago, right, where a new camera could really lift you to a different level, or at least people thought so. Now this is kind of over. I think
it's happening much too fast, and the pace that we see cameras or new cameras in the market is quite amazing, and that will also lead us a bit later to our next topic, which is a review that I did of the FUJIFILM GFX ETERNA 55. This is a really first look review. I will elaborate a bit more, but that's also part of it. Hopefully this camera will generate a bit more interest in the market. Let's see.
Yeah, so we'll just reminisce a little bit, talk about this camera, and then we'll dive into a little bit of the news. We'll talk about Sony TCL Corporation when it comes to the Bravia TVs. There's a couple other news items that I don't need to mention them all. You'll see it in the list of the show notes what we're going to go through. But I just want to look back first a little bit. So let's talk about what we've learned about the audience over the last 100 episodes, and I did a bit of a deep dive into the comments, into the emails we received, and I think it's fair to say that the community is in general a little bit frustrated with manufacturers treating users as beta testers. This is a recurring theme that we've seen in various. We got a lot of feedback always on episodes where we talked about whether it's a firmware update that kind of didn't fix something, or it's a new camera or a new piece of gear that didn't work as intended from the start. Like, people do not accept anymore if something that they buy is not working as expected, obviously.
And it became the norm. Basically, with almost every camera manufacturer that we are talking to, they kind of they have their own deadline. They have to come out with the camera, and they know, since this is the norm now, and there is nothing that we can do as buyers or customers, they literally bring it the way they think it should be right now, and they will try to enhance it with some other features a bit later. So yeah, this is annoying. I have to say, this is annoying.
Yeah, and it's clear from that is that you value us most, this podcast most, when we call out the hype. Whether it's buggy firmware or the whatever internal RAW or cinema camera marketing buzz. This is what garners a lot of attention. When I think people appreciate this kind of take a step back of what the manufacturer claims. There's just too much gear out there to test it all, also for us. But we are able to, even when we are not, in detail testing everything, we can categorize stuff that we see in the broader context. And the broader context is also an economic reality for a lot of professional filmmakers, that there is a financial anxiety right now. We have very strong response to episodes where we're covering industry contractions, like the RE layoffs or the fall of Vimeo, which was in the last episode, and stuff like that, because we see a lot of people are experiencing all over the world, and our audience is very global, are experiencing a shift in how content is produced and also consumed, and how the traditional broadcasters that I think for a lot of our audience have been the employers for a very long time are kind of contracting, where other industries, of course, the creator economy and so on, and personal corporate film teams of companies are actually expanding. So this is a global trend that we see, and it is also reflected in the kind of gear that is now being sold and selling well. It's we see this general trend of course, smaller cameras,
cheaper,
more affordable cameras, and also in general all the accessory gear that comes along with it. That's the trend we are experiencing, and I think that's what a lot of people and our hope is to help you try and navigate that. Like to still carve out your niche, even if that means that even if your job is changing, that you can still pay the bills next month.
Well, especially that there is so much marketing involved now. Everybody is pushing, and it's really, you can't avoid marketing from any company. We don't even have to name names, because show me one company that doesn't do or try to do very efficient marketing to the point of drilling your brain and convince you that this is the best possible equipment to buy. So in so many ways, what we're trying to do in general with our site, but also in the podcast, is try to separate the noise, the marketing noise, with the reality.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Then, of course, over the last almost 2 years in this podcast, since we started, this was literally the beginning, but it was the early days of generative AI video when we started, and we kind of tracked this development, where a lot of other sites in the industry are almost ignoring it. I think in 2026, it's fair to say it's come to a point where nobody can afford to ignore it anymore, because it is starting to cost actual production jobs. I mean, we see this all the time. I see commercials that are...
We see and we hear from colleagues.
We see and hear, like we see, especially in the commercial field, we see a lot of commercial productions that are planned as actual real-life shoots getting scrapped altogether or combined to be partly real shoot and partly generated video. This is a reality we have to face, and there is no point in ignoring it. That's why we are trying to track the development here and hopefully also guide our audience to, survive in this new day and age. Because as any change, it also gives a lot of opportunities, I think, for a lot of people, not just up and coming ones, but the ones who have experience, who are already professionals in our field, like most of our audience are. If they are able to apply this into this new era, I think it's going to be very beneficial. We already have a lot of emails and also people we know personally who are able to already take this shift. And I feel 2026 is still very young, but I feel already like a little bit of a trend from this fundamental opposition to all of that generative video AI is crumbling, because people start realizing they have to get around using it in one way or another if they want to survive in their field. And it's not true for every field of filmmaking, of course, but for many.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about too much about AI, but I really hope it's going to do like a full circle. So many things going to move into AI, and then people will get so tired of this that they will come back to shooting real stuff. But
I just wanted to mention in terms of, I base this also on data from our latest episodes. For example, the very nice, almost 2-hour interview I did with Oren Sofa, which was really focusing on AI hype and his very strong opinion about generative video AI is one of the most popular audio episodes we've ever had. Okay. And you can tell that there is a lot of interest in that. And also, we're kind of caught in the middle here, but we're really all about defending our craft. And if it doesn't matter if that craft is, I think it's just important to know what you're talking about. And if you are an experienced filmmaker and you know how to light, you know how to stage, you know how to tell a story, and that's the most fundamental thing, then you are going to survive also in this new age, right? It just will take adaptation. And I think that's also what Oren said. It's not that he's fundamentally opposed to it. He sees a lot of applications for it. And for him as a cinematographer, he sees a lot of applications in actually combining real life shoots with these tools that are available now, especially in VFX. A lot of things are going to become a lot more affordable and attainable for a broad swath of the audience, And I'm not talking about all the ethical problems of fake video and so on. That's a whole thing we also tackled in this very long interview. But just from a kind of like work perspective, there is a lot of opportunity here.
I think we were a bit lucky. I think it happened on the 3rd episode when Nikon acquired RED. That's another thing that we see quite a lot. That helped us to boost awareness to our podcast. But this is something which is also very fundamental happening, and we see a lot of our audience also reacting to this when they want to know. And that's different acquisitions of companies, and in general. How the Chinese companies are becoming stronger, bigger, and what it means for our industry as a whole.
And in general, how much consolidation is happening. Because, of course, Nikon, Japanese company, taking over RED, but also today, like this week's news, we also talk about how Sony is effectively ceding the control of the Bravia brand to TCL, which is a Chinese company. So it's in general... There are a lot of consolidations happening, which is just a kind of reflection of how the industry and the consumption behavior of people is changing. But this is also, it's all connected, and it's just an illustration of that. And of course, what we also should mention is, and we should probably do more in the future, I think concepts like episode 44, we talked about the worst and best gear purchases we ever made. And this is something which it provided really a massive catharsis for listeners. And it kind of being vulnerable about our own financial missteps when we usually just talk about new gear, I think is something that gives the community a lot of trust also, because we realize, first of all, you don't need to buy everything, not at all. And there's so much stuff out there that you don't need, and you only realize once you have it, And I think that's something, a topic like that, I think we should probably do more often, which engages the community, because we can see that this always gets a lot of response. And like we do the poll on the website, maybe we should do almost like not a poll, but something that kind of activates our listeners and watchers a little bit more, because I liked how much feedback we got on that one.
But every year will bring its own good and less good purchases that we all did. Yeah, so I'm not worried about this. We will be able to summarize this as the year goes through.
Yeah. Then of course one of the things that's consistently one of the most popular things that CineD does in general are our lab tests, and the results we get from any lab test rankings and dynamic range, latitude, and rolling shutter results, because I guess we're the only ones doing it that systematically and consistently with all the relevant cameras that are coming out, even though it might sometimes take us a couple months after a camera is released, because we only do it with production versions of the camera. That is something we can see, like one of the latest episodes, also the annual recap with Gunther about the lab test of 2025 has been one of the most popular ones lately. And I think we'll probably, we always try to find ways to do more of those tests, which is not so easy because of the work involved, but we'll do our best. And also, I think it's fair to say that since we've started to do a little bit more, not always do the news types conversations thing every week, sometimes to rest for 1 or 2 weeks, and then in the meantime do episodes with other people from the industry, whether it's manufacturers or
some guests, basically
filmmakers, guests, put stuff into context that makes a lot of sense. Of course, for example, the Nexus G1 interview was extremely popular with those two guys from Australia we talked about also last week.
So if you want us to talk to anybody specific, or if you have any ideas or something that you really want us to talk about in the podcast, just write us. We are reading everything. We are listening. We will try to implement. It's not always very easy. That's, of course, to be completely transparent here. but we will always consider. So anything that you have to say, what things you like, what you don't like, even about the anamorphic look that we have here, and we have to thank Nunlight for providing us with the really nice lights here. That was a great support from the company. I think it's anything from look to content. Just let us know.
Yes, Felix, anything you want to add?
I think also enjoyed doing the episode so far, and really looking forward to this year now, and let's see what cameras are released and what the industry brings. I think. Yeah.
What was your personal favorite over the last couple months?
I really enjoyed also the conversation with the Nexus guys. But besides that, I mean, always liked the episodes where we did something special, for example, like flying with the drone in the intro or stuff like that, because it's something different, and I think also
do you want to say you didn't like my episode cooking? No, come on.
I mean, this was also actually a nice one. I mean, this was different. I got invited to Johnnie's home, and we cooked there, or he cooked.
I think it was the only episode that didn't have any shots from this studio, no?
Yeah, I think maybe. So. That's the only one. Nino was absent, and I decided to do something a bit crazier and just ask Felix to join me at home, confiscated the kitchen from my wife, and then we cooked a little bit.
I think it can be a separate show. It can be like a spin-off.
I'm
not sure it fits in this format, to be honest. And I think the audience data suggests.
Let's do a separate cooking show together, Johnnie.
Yeah. Imagine
cooking for filmmakers, which means basically having no time and cooking everywhere. Yeah. Or just do a pizza from the supermarket.
No.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. I think we are going to continue, to provide the theoretical armor to defend the cinematographer's value to clients. I think that's one of the things, as our industry is shifting into something that is gonna. Yeah, I think our jobs are going to change quite a bit over the next couple of years, and I think it's very interesting to kind of be the hand that can guide people a little bit through this crazy time.
I think I can summarize it in literally one sentence. We are all moving from being filmmakers to content creators. Like it or not, we can see this also now. This is the new trend that big companies, Sony, Apple, and such. If in the past they were all trying to get the attention of filmmakers, and that's what we all wanted to be. And of course, in practicality, we are trying to do some films. Now it's all about content creation, and you can see that big companies are also adopting the name content creator into their slogans and so on. So this is something that fundamental here.
But I mean, even if you do film, I mean, I think the trend is in general just to you see that if there's gonna be a lot more. There's an expectation from everybody, whether it's corporate clients or even on big feature films. I guess that's changing too. Budgets are shrinking, so people are expected to do more different things at the same time, right? Not that on a feature film production you're not going to have a sound department anymore, but it's going to shrink, and it's and the technology is facilitating a more efficient workflow, whether it's camera to cloud or the whole process from the concept. And I'm intentionally not saying script because I want to include basically all kinds of motion picture, moving pictures that are out there, from concept to final delivery. This is shortening, the whole window is shortening, the whole process is shortening, and it's simplifying. And we all are aware, if we're honest, as much as a lot of people are sentimental about, want to work on a big movie set with 1 million people in the crew, we all have to be realistic, because there are a lot of inefficiencies still that can be optimized through efficient use of technology without cutting jobs, but making the whole storytelling process a bit more effective. And I think that's where everything is headed. I mean, for a very long time, we were focusing on better and better cameras, but the better camera alone doesn't make the whole process easier. And I think now we see this shift that for a long time, like people were just talking about camera to cloud. They were just talking about whatever automatic transcriptions and stuff like that. And now we see these things under economic pressure being implemented in various productions. And I think that also facilitates the fact that on smaller productions, of course, what you refer to as content creators, as people are just expected to do more. It's getting harder and harder for small crews to justify extra personnel, unfortunately.
But that has been happening for years. Especially since the DSLR revolution. So suddenly you were expected to do photos and videos, and in our little world, for example, if you're coming from news, you used to have the cameraman, sound, lightman, driver, producer, and that was kind of all. Many of those jobs have been considered into one. So you have to be more efficient and you have to know more, and that's again because of budget shrinking and so on. So yeah, but personally, I can talk only about documentaries because that's what I do mostly, and I really enjoy to work alone or at least with another person. And in this regards, the equipment is working for me, I have to say, because we talked about cameras that are better now. And if I take, for example, the Nikon ZR example with built-in 32-bit, that's another safety net. So when I do sound and I have to do the sound, I have another safety net here, even working without a soundman, because that's my reality. So, and in general, we always say, at least between us, what doesn't fit in the bag stays at home when you run and gun. And we know that if you fly somewhere, you need to be smaller, more compact, and so on. You need to rely on a very specific equipment that you trust. And I think that we are now at a point that the equipment is, we keep saying this, but the equipment is not an excuse anymore. It's in such a high level that what people really need to work on is about their ability to tell a story, basically. That's the main thing, because at the end, even if you do a great story with this little thing, nobody will care.
So maybe we should just close CineD tomorrow and just do MZ courses on that.
I wouldn't do this so fast, because I think there's still, it's not that you can throw away heritage and content, and there's so much more to say here. But if I could, it was much more about educational stuff. It's all over the place, but maybe what is really missing is to have it under a roof, like we try to do with MZ, and get the people. I don't want to say to understand, because that's a bit patronizing here, but people need to realize how important it is to learn the craft of storytelling. And you have to have a certain sensitivity in order to do so. Yeah, it's like the same with filming. Sometimes, what makes the difference between one cameraman to another? They can work both with the same camera, and the images will look completely different. It's because the eye and the experience you develop. And it's the same about storytelling. Sometimes I feel that you really need to talk less and listen more when you are with your protagonist. Yeah, and that's a key thing, because many of us simply like to talk, and then you don't listen. And you can see this in the conversation. Yeah, when you're not really answering. You're not listening to the person and then direct the conversation towards where he want you to go, and you have your own agenda or your own script and your own questions, and that's it. So I think this is something that hopefully we can do more within 2026. But let's see, maybe the audience think differently.
No, very good point. Very good point. Good. It's as the gear kind of is perfect already, all the gear, it becomes almost invisible. You know what I mean? It's like because it almost doesn't matter which camera you're using anymore, which light, because all of that is affordable. It's out there. Everybody can use it almost. So it just will come down to the craft. It will come down to your abilities to tell a story, to actually differentiate yourself in the market. And I think AI is almost like the cherry on top here, because it will be so easy to manipulate images now, or do transitions or backgrounds or whatever. You will not have an excuse anymore for I couldn't do this film because I didn't have the budget to build a I don't know, stadium with 20,000 people as extras in, like watching my game. You can just literally generate that now. So, there's no excuse anymore. That's kind of like, that makes it limitless in a way. So it's just, and we already see examples of people who are filmmakers who are using these tools like in that way to tell great stories and combine it with real footage. So that gives me hope. Good. But let's move on. So we have enough, I think, for the next 100 or 1,000 episodes to talk about over the next couple of years.
Really? That's what are you wishing me, to be here for another 1,000 episodes?
Oh, why not? That's just 5 years now.
No,
that's like,
actually, yes, you're right. It's only 5 years. No, come on. Let's do quickly.
With math. It's actually 10 years. No, it's 20 years. It's 20 years.
That's it.
Oh my God, that's why we are filmmakers? Because I'm bad at math. So it's 20 years,
not
Johnnie.
bankers, yeah. So okay, I'll do my best.
20 years? We can do that?
I have commitment to my family, my kids, and of course to you to stay around as long as possible. Although some people are saying, hey, what happened to Johnnie? It's like...
Yeah. All right, so good. Let's move on actually to a review. So you worked very hard for the last couple of weeks on reviewing the FUJIFILM GFX ETERNA 55. Now, this is a camera that was much anticipated, a long time in the making.
Since November 2024. I think that was the first time that we reported about this camera. And again, I think we were very fortunate and very thankful to Fujifilm to let us have the camera, even if it was for a very short time. I think it was like 1.5 days, 2 days maximum that we got it. Still, I think it was essential. And I have to say also that Fujifilm absolutely gave us the freedom to do whatever we want with the camera and also share our opinion. And I'm very thankful for their open mind, because at the end, our commitment is to ourselves and to you guys. And if, like, when I'm diving into the review, I want to say that first of all, the image coming out of this camera is really beautiful, and I have to separate the image itself from what I'm gonna say next. Yeah, because if you are into tall sensor, open gate, large sensor in general, this kind of medium format, I think you're gonna really enjoy working with the camera. It's a very robust product, and it has a lot going for it. In the sense, for example, the electronic ND filter, which is really great. And by the way, in the review itself, I will elaborate more. Yeah, you also have the like LCD screen in both sides, like a 3-inch LCD, and it's very easy for you. And if you work with another person, to see the menu itself, where you are, and so on. And of course, you have and this is something that I really like, is the backup battery. You can use a normal Fujifilm battery, and if you ran out of your V-Log battery, you simply swap, and the camera will kind of
V-mount. Yeah.
The V-mount, sorry. The camera will continue recording. You can also record with this small battery for about 22 minutes, but then not all the functions will be available, but in general.
But it's hot swap. Yeah,
that's right.
Great.
It's really, really great. So they did a lot of stuff that is right. Yeah, and here now I want to talk a little bit about. I don't want to say criticism because it's a harsh word, but things that in general what didn't really work for me. And I looked at the camera from a documentary filmmaking perspective. If you are doing larger productions, I'm sure that this camera will be perfect for you. But for me as a documentary filmmaker, I have to think about what equipment work for me.
But first, before you dive into that, tell us what you actually filmed with it and where.
Yeah, sure. So I went to the UK and I met literally a power couple. Yeah, it's Malcolm and Amber. Malcolm is a Steadicam operator. He's a stunt. He's working very closely with companies in our industry as a consultant, and is an actor and simply a very nice, knowledgeable person, really. And Amber, his partner, she is a Formula One presenter, a lovely person, very open-minded, very outgoing, you can see that she's a presenter because she knows to talk, which is very nice to meet people that really are very...
Makes it easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I really regarded them as a power couple. And the reason that I went to the UK, it's because they are building their own race car, or should I say drift car.
Would you want to mention how we met Malcolm originally?
We met Malcolm and Amber originally, I think it was IBC 2024. And Malcolm, both of them were working at that time with digital photo. I think they still do, but in general, I met them at the booth and made an interview about whatever equipment it was from digital.
I think it was I interviewed him for the CineTree once, and you did something else.
Yeah, but that CineTree I think was 2023, and later on, 2024, we covered something different. But and then we started to talk, and I said, "Yeah, we are building our racing car," and it's always funny how my imagination went in one direction. And again, I have to confess here, when I do those mini documentaries, I don't want to know too much. I don't want to see any videos. I don't want to see any photos. I don't want to see the location. I want to know nothing. I'm trying to talk, to learn about the person itself. But everything else that has to do with visuals, I want to be surprised on the field. And then it's almost like, the feedback that I get from the surrounding, that's the easiest for me. That's how I work. I know some people really love to do a lot of go really deep dive into the location. What I don't like it. I want to be impressed when I'm there. Sometimes it's really great, and sometimes it's a bit of a letdown because what you built in your imagination is simply not there. So when I talked to Malcolm and Amber, it was like we are building a race car. You can imagine where my imagination was like in this kind of very nice garage and a racing car and whatever. In reality, they took a Mazda, and apparently a Mazda car, there's a certain model, sorry guys, I'm not really into this, but there's a certain model that is really cheap to what it offers. And they are actually building, they're changing components, they're enhancing components, but this they do basically at home. Yeah. So it's very nice to see that they're working on this project, and what the end result should be that it will allow them to go to the racing track. And we are a guest of Drift Limits in the UK. They were very nice to literally let us use the facility and use different cars over there and film. Yeah. So anyway, that will allow them to go with their own car and do some drifts, and apparently it's a lot of fun. I got a bit sick, I have to say. This is really not for me, all of this but that really allowed me to test the camera kind of to the limits. And when I say to the limits, we all know that one of the concerns with the Fujifilm Eterna 55 was, for example, the rolling shutter effect. So I'm happy to say that this is, at least visually speaking, it is absolutely not a concern. I was doing a lot of pans. Of course, it's there, but not to the point that you go like, oh wow, this is not usable.
I always feel like with the rolling shutter, it's more of a problem if there's this wobble, like inside the frame. Yeah. And as long as that's not there, it's manageable. No,
it was really good, and I really encourage people not to look at the actual object that I'm filming, but to look at the background. Then you can see how good or not the rolling shutter is. So in general, I think, and that was a major concern for many, I think the rolling shutter is being handled very well. And of course, we will run a lab test when we get the camera. I have to say that I was working with an early version of the firmware. That's very important for me to note. And you could see this here with some little quirks in the menu and so on. But all in all, of course, the camera is already functioning. Yeah. So now I want to go back and say, as a documentary filmmaker, what didn't really work for me. And I think the main thing, and again, I'm separating it completely from the actual picture quality, which is really great. For me, the camera doesn't align here. I have this kind of holy triangle, and I think about the actual price of the camera, the specifications, and who is it for. And those three elements, if you look at the camera, it's $16,500. And what it does and what it doesn't have, for example, internal RAW recording, or high frame rate, only 120 frames per second, but only in HD. Yeah. And knowing the general economic right now and what the industry is kind of heading to, which is smaller box type or smaller cameras like the FX3 and the Nikon ZR and the Canon EOS C50. So those three elements of price, who is it for, and the specifications doesn't align for me. And that's where I get a little bit concerned.
But I think because you mentioned size, I was always, when I had this camera in my hand for the first time, I think at IBC, I felt that it is much smaller than I anticipated. Like the body itself is like it's a little box. And of course, Fuji trying to target this high-end stuff, whenever they display, they showed it with a huge lens and a lot of rigged up stuff. But if you break it down to what it is, it's quite small, and considering that it even has, this battery that you mentioned at the beginning, like the actual sensor block itself is small.
That's not the issue. The issue is different. You can literally take only the body itself, and this is something that I think nobody else is talking about. When you're moving around internationally with a $16,500, you better have a passport for the camera itself, and we call it carnet. You can't literally take the camera out of the country, move to another country, and risk to pay duties on it. So, and this is something that you can absolutely avoid when you work with the smaller cameras, because they're worth what, $3,500 up to $5,000. So that's not a big issue. I'm just saying that if you work with a $16,500 camera, you have to register the camera at the customs. You have to have documents. It costs money, and then when you going out of the country, you have to register it, and you have to register it when you enter. I try to avoid this altogether by asking Fujifilm to supply me the camera within the UK. And that's exactly what happened, and I'm very thankful for that. But I avoided all this bureaucracy when it comes to customs. So this is something that has nothing to do with the size of the camera. This is something that you have to take into account if you travel a lot and if you do international production with this camera.
Yeah, with any camera. But if you look at this photo from IBC, I think it's fair to say that you can shrink it down to relatively small size. You don't have to rig it up.
Sure, of course. Way. And I also try to keep it kind of on a small size. I worked, so let me just say that this camera can shoot up to 8K, but Fujifilm really recommends to work with this in 4K and open gate. That's when you get the best picture quality. And I really like open gate because you can really later reframe to anything that you want for social media, for 16:9, for 239:1, and so on. And I worked with two lenses from Sirui, anamorphic lenses, the 35 and the 60 millimeter. And the 35, I wish I would have taken with me the 40 millimeter, because that will save me a bit of vignetting that I have. But there's also a way, and I'm demonstrating in the review itself how to avoid it. But from 40 millimeter and up, there's absolutely no problem. Those are full frame lenses, but they can work very easy with this large sensor in open gate, and I really enjoyed working with them. Of course, maybe you don't get this very strong anamorphic look that you're looking for in terms of flares and aesthetic, but they do. I like when it's more subtle, and I like it when you literally use the entire sensor. And I like those lenses. They are $999 each, which is, sorry to say, but so little for what they give. And I can already confirm that Sirui will have in this Iron Star Iron Star series, they will have 3 more lenses coming up, and then you will have even a bigger choice of lenses to choose from. So back to the camera itself. It can be small. It has some limitations, and at the end of the day, if you like the Fujifilm look, and if you need or want to use this large sensor format, it's absolutely for you. Yeah, I think for the independent filmmaker, it's quite hard to justify the price. $16,500. It's a lot of money. There are other alternatives in the market within the full frame region that gives you internal RAW recording, that gives you 4K in 120 frames per second, and are much smaller and much cheaper. So this is something to consider. I guess for professionals who are doing cinematography, that might be a valid tool, of course. For production houses, I hope they will start to adopt and work with this camera. For rental houses, we know that Arri, Red, and Sony are literally ruling the space right now. I really want to see how this camera will, when it's out and about, if companies or rental houses will buy the cameras. Yeah, this I hope for Fujifilm. But one thing that I have to say, they gain a lot of experience by building this camera, the menu and accessories and in general, this is their first cinema camera. I hope that we're gonna see, like within the next one or two products, something that is more affordable and something that people like us, independent filmmakers, can use. And I'm saying it's not that we can't use this, but we can afford to buy for ourselves. And I want to end up and just this is a small anecdote. A few years ago, I was I think it was CineGear, and I met a very reputable camera and lens manufacturer. And they asked me, Johnny, what do you think if we're gonna make cine lenses? At that time, they had only photo lenses. And I say, why do you want to do cine lenses? And he said, because we hear from so many people that they will buy and use our cine lenses. And I said, don't rush. There's always such a huge gap between people telling you we will buy your lenses than people that are actually purchasing the lenses. I mean, you really have to justify a purchase. And in reality, that manufacturer did some cine lenses, and I don't think they were that successful when it comes to purchasing those. So I know that Fujifilm heard from many people, including us, please make a cinema camera. And finally, they did a cinema camera. And Fujifilm is a company that is very much used to see back orders on their products. Almost every camera that Fujifilm brings to the market is back ordered because they're really great and they are very affordable. With this one, I think the story will be a bit different. So I don't know if Fujifilm is really expecting to see back orders or how many of those they are anticipating to sell.
It's a completely new market for
exactly.
them. Yeah.
So it's a new market. It's a completely different audience. We've been in few events where there was a lot of interest from cinematographers, but I don't know, I really want to see if those cinematographers that showed interest will really start to use it.
Well, I think there's a couple things that, first of all, they're still kind of unique with that large sensor in that size. I mean, we do know that. I mean, they just got this badge from IMAX that it's made for IMAX, which is kind of a big thing for them because I think they really want to go into the high end.
Surprising for me, by the way, no internal raw recording, for example.
Yeah,
so
but I guess IMAX really cares about the image quality, and that is a testament to the great image quality that the large sensor delivers, which you need if you are experiencing something on a huge IMAX screen.
Yeah.
So that is really great for them. And it's also something that as far as I know, Blackmagic Design has not received for the 17K camera, which is also a large format sensor, albeit a little bit smaller than this one, but still it is a large, and as far as I know, they haven't received that badge. And that camera, of course, does do internal Blackmagic RAW. So that's interesting for me. So I think it's a testament to the quality of what the camera delivers if IMAX gives that badge. And I mean, the other thing, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast. It's like, I mean, everybody's talking about the lack of internal RAW recording. And you also, of course, mentioned it. This is something that wasn't even expected until a couple of years ago with a lot of cameras, but except for Sony and Fujifilm, now most other camera manufacturers, even in their lower end offerings, have some kind of internal RAW recording, whether it's ProRes RAW, Blackmagic RAW, or something else. And I wonder if there is a way for a manufacturer like Atomos or even Blackmagic Design or whoever to come up with almost like a new version of that Ninja Star. Remember that little recorder that Atomos had that doesn't even have a screen? I don't need a screen, right? I have a great screen in this one. I have a viewfinder now. Imagine somebody made this specific, well, it doesn't even need to be specific for this camera, but a tiny ProRes RAW recorder or even Blackmagic RAW recorder that you can attach to the side of a camera, on top of a camera, which ideally even has a very simple way of getting power from a V-mount via D-tap or whatever, or even USB. and then you don't have a screen. You just have some kind of indication in the camera that it is actually outputting that, and you have a little diode or whatever screen on the little recorder that it's recording it. And then you have a CF Express Type B card that is recording the ProRes RAW. That would be amazing.
So
it
first
would
of all,
solve the problem.
The camera do have external recording. This is thank you for
RAW,
external RAW recording to Blackmagic devices or Atomos. I don't agree with you here. I think that to be a waste of money in development or investment or whatever. The camera simply needs to have, not specifically this one, they need to have internal RAW recording. Why am I so much fighting into internal RAW recording? My experience is very simple. If you're on a high-end production, you can work without any RAW recording. You know why? Because you have the best DOPs on set, you have the best crew on set, and you have the best post-production to support you. So literally there is time to compose, there is time to expose correctly, there is time to verify all the settings and so on. So it's in many cases you get the perfect image. When we are running as independent filmmakers, when there is sometimes no time, you can do mistakes with exposures, you can do mistakes with ISO settings, you can do mistakes with white balance. That's exactly when internal RAW recording becomes so effective, because I can go back and when I edit my footage, I can forgive myself doing some mistakes and I can correct it so easy, seamlessly. And this is why I know, of course, it means more data and everything. We know it all, yeah. But it is a safety net, and it's such a great safety net that I'm learning how to rely on it, and I don't want to move back away from it.
Yeah,
Simple
it's something that a lot of people have come to expect, of course. Yeah. And for a camera at this price point, I think it'd be great to have. But it's not I think it's not a deal breaker for a lot of people. So let's see. So
if the specifications is not a deal breaker, is it a deal breaker for you personally that it's 16,500? Please look at it from an owner perspective, not a rental person. Will you 2026, will you invest $16,500 on a camera?
For independent owner operators, it's going to be very hard to justify.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the issue, because I want Fujifilm just to make a camera that we can all afford and own. I don't want to rent stuff. Yeah, we have XH2 at the office. This is my main working camera. I'm saying this in a very, I love this camera. The XH2S is an amazing camera. The GFX 102 is a great camera. So either, hopefully in the future, there will be a GFX 102 firmware update that will allow some things that you can do with this with the Eterna, the GFX Eterna 55 to do. That will be one way to give more. Or, and I know it's Super 35, but I personally have no issue with Super 35 at all. It's not that everything is evolving around full frame, yeah. But to see literally the XH2S in a different body, more professional, more rigid, this will already make me personally very, very happy, and I'm sure I know our audience, many people will be thankful for Fujifilm if they do so.
I look forward to trying the camera myself, but I look forward even more to trying another cinema camera from Fujifilm myself, and they have another one.
You talk about the Evo?
The Instax Evo Cinema.
Yeah, Nino is sitting on my neck to bring one from Japan because
yes, please, it's so fun.
Japan is simply cheaper.
That's the one we talked about last week, which can do 15-second
15
clips,
seconds,
and you can print out a still. So that's what I want. No, thank you so much for this review and the insights. I think you guys will enjoy that full review, which is Johnny talking about the tech specs and also this little mini documentary that he made.
But you know what?
Link in the show notes.
And now I notice I have to drink a little bit, then I'm so much better talking. I should have drank before sitting in front of the camera and talking.
For the future. I don't know what that means in terms of...
And I'm not drinking. I'm really...
You just need to start day drinking. Okay. Yeah. Good. Let's move on to a little bit of news. I think I will start together and then you have to move on to a phone call. That's right. Let's start with this first one, which is a little bit in line with what we mentioned at the beginning. So Sony and TCL, a screen or TV manufacturer from China form a joint venture for the Bravia TV business by Sony, with TCL taking a 51% majority stake, which is interesting. So as effectively, that means Sony is ceding control of the Bravia brand, which we know that Sony has actually stopped making panels a long time ago. They haven't made any of their own LCD or OLED panels in a very long time. So that I think they used either LG or Samsung panels.
They're the main manufacturers currently, those two companies.
Yeah.
But I think we have to look at this at the broader spectrum and what it means. I mean, we know that I think it was exactly 10 years ago when Sharp, also a Japanese company, sold everything to Foxconn. And then it was such a shock in Japan because Sharp is still it's a Japanese company. And it doesn't matter if they make fridges, laundry machines or whatever, but they sold the TV division to Foxconn, and that was already a shock. I mean, there were so many people saying back then, how come that the Japanese government did not help them to stay the way they are? But this is, first, companies or international companies are selling everything they have or cooperating with Chinese companies.
They're making everything in China already.
That's right. And then they're complaining that the Chinese are better or they're ruling the... So it's very
better at
manufacturing.
Yeah.
And here, in this particular case, for me personally, it's a bit of a shock. I mean, of course, we are aware that Sony, in general, is probably not selling as many Bravia's screens like they used to, but that another sign of time, let's say.
Well, I think in general, the TV business, of course, very different also from the camera business in the sense that it's a very, very low margin business. I think you can hardly make any money with these. If you look at the amount of quality you can get from for a couple $100 dollars, you can get an amazing OLED screen now, which is simply staggering. And if you just look at the size of the boxes, I mean, the shipping alone to the warehouses, it's crazy. What is left at the end for them as a profit must be very little. So that's why it's consolidated into these two big manufacturers who are making the panels actually, and everybody else is just incorporating their electronics and interface.
No, you need the engine, you need a lot of stuff, and that's what gives their a signature of picture, and that's why we still have a few manufacturers doing it. But it just. When I nothing to do now with China whatsoever. It's more like I felt a bit awkward here. But on the other hand, I don't know if you guys are aware, there's also some type of political tension now between China and Japan. And I'm actually happy to see that businesses are still happening between the countries. So hopefully business in that regards will be above politics.
We also see more and more cameras from Japanese manufacturers actually now being manufactured in China, which is something of more of a recent development in the last couple of years. For example, I think the Sony FX6 is made in China, and many other cameras now too. So that you just look at the sticker at the bottom of your camera and you will see.
You will see also Vietnam and so on. I think some of them, because of all those taxes, tariffs, and whatever, and it's not an easy for a manufacturer. But anyway.
Okay, Johnny, I think I'll let you. I need to let you go, and I'll cover the rest of the news.
Thank you very much, Nino. Let's keep up the good work. I'm doing a little bit of like this to ourselves, but I really hope that our audience will continue to support us. And I'll continue with life. See you later.
Okay, let's continue with the news of the week without Johnny. And the next topic I want to talk about is the Behringer Flow 4V, a compact audio mixer and recorder for filmmakers. Now, Behringer, not exactly a manufacturer that we have heard a lot about as filmmakers, to be honest. Now, Felix, I want to ask you behind the scenes, because you are also, apart from a filmmaker, an audio person. What do you make of this?
Well, it's interesting that they kind of entered in that audio recorder market, because I think Behringer is well known. Doing a lot of stuff like in producing mixing consoles, and also kind of being a bit the copycat for synthesizers. So they have a lot of like old Moog style synthesizer that they kind of produce for a very cheap and affordable price. And it's also interesting because I think the company behind Behringer, it's called Music Tribe, and they are owning a lot of companies. Basically, they are owning Midas or TC Electronic and a lot of well-known companies, and they of course kind of then implementing their intellectual property in their new products also. And I think that's probably also that might be the case here, that they are using Midas preamps, which are very well known for their good quality. And I think it's crazy because I think this is a very competitive price. I think for 279 euros or dollars, I don't know exactly, something in that ballpark, and which is
and it even does 32-bit float.
Exactly, it's has 8 inputs if I'm not mistaken, and 32-bit float also gives you like the ability to have time code, and I think even it has a HDMI in, so it has a record trigger from your camera, which is also interesting. And I think if you compare this to Zoom or Tascam, they have similar products, but just double or even much higher price definitely, which of course that's quite competitive then that they entered in this market.
Compare this. A typical other device would be something from sound devices, right?
Of course, then the high-end stuff that's even much higher.
And actually it says that it also functions as a USB 2 audio interface via USB-C, providing 12 input channels and 2 output channels to a host computer. It's kind of
so
massive.
I think this is you can do this with a lot of audio recorders, like using them as an audio interface when you connect them to your computer or laptop. And I think they also released some kind of extension unit where you kind of can increase the input levels of the recorder or audio interface. So that's also interesting. And I think it's interesting to see that they are entering this market, and probably also because I think currently, or it's starting today or tomorrow, it's the NAMM show in Los Angeles, which is basically the pandant to the
I think this
NAB
was announced during NAMM.
So I think this is probably their product that they kind of show there. And interesting, as I don't know, it's not, I think there are, as you mentioned, there is Zoom, Tascam, and Sound Device, which are in this market, and also Deity, and
it's crowded. It's a crowded market now.
I think they decided to enter that market, but I think they did it also in a very competitive way with a very competitive price. So let's see. Looking forward to hear from people how this like works, and if it's a nice product. But like first look, it's for that price, it's really promising. But
amazing. All right, let's move on to another gear news, with is an upgrade to the PrimeLight design VoxBox Pro Mark III. Now, honestly, I think we've never reviewed it, but I need to review this thing because we have been using the VoxBox Pro Mark II for a very long time now. What is the VoxBox? Some of you might have heard of the iDirect, which is a different company making something similar. It's essentially a mirror box that you put in front of your camera, which allows the interviewer to see the interviewee and look them directly in the face, while the interviewee looks directly into the camera. Actually, there's a semi-translucent mirror that kind of reflects the image of the interviewer for the interviewee and vice versa. So they look at each other, but in reality, the interviewee really looks down the barrel of the lens. So for somebody who's not used to looking down the barrel of a lens like I do now, it's very hard to convey emotion to something, to an inanimate object like a lens, if you don't see the face of somebody. So this kind of solves that problem, and you can use it with any person that is not used to being, like talking directly to a camera. And especially when you do interviews for a documentary, what happens very often is that if there's a camera operator behind the camera and then an interviewer next to it, even if you ask somebody to look directly at the lens, which is something rare, it's a kind of specific intimate connection with the audience, if you want that effect, it's very hard for somebody to do that if a person is sitting next to the camera. So the eyes are constantly wandering off camera and on camera again, because people get confused where they should actually look. A device like that actually solves the problem. Now, the Mark II is something we've used for a couple of years, and it's very good. It is a mirror box that consists of actual glass mirrors, so it is not small. Now the Mark III is a bit more compact and solves a couple of the issues that we've also had with the Mark II. First of all, the mirror itself is now on a hinge, so you can more easily adjust it. There's various positions where you can actually position the interviewer. I think on this image, if you see the video version of this, you can actually see that the interviewer sits next to the camera operator, looks down this mirror. You don't see the reflection here, but this presenter, this interviewer, she's actually seeing a reflection of the interviewee, and vice versa. The interviewee sees her. And the final image is this. The final image is somebody looking straight down the barrel of a lens, which is what you want for documentaries like this. It's also something that's become a lot more popular with, a lot of documentaries over the last couple of years, because it's gotten much easier to do that with devices like this. And there's really, as far as I know, only these two manufacturers making them, iDirect and PrimeLight Design, which is from the UK. And I prefer the VoxBox Pro solution because it's more compact, it's easier to set up, and it comes in a Peli case. It is still kind of a bulky thing to transport. They also have an Air, they call the Air version of this, which is a bit more easy to fold down. And it can also double as a teleprompter, actually. I didn't include the image of that here, but you can. There's like a little holder on the side. You can put an iPad on the side. And then if you can control your iPad through a different device, you can actually have a quite large, I think up to a 13-inch iPad. You can have a relatively large teleprompting setup for that if you want to use it as that. So quite versatile. And I think what they've solved with this version also is that a lot of cameras these days have handles on top that kind of stick out a little bit. For example, like the FX6, which is of course a very popular camera. So they kind of made a little adjustment here, so you can actually use it with a camera like that without actually detaching the top handle, which is nice. So yeah, so that's the new thing from a small UK company called PrimeLight Design. And it also, I almost forgot to mention, this now supports wider lenses, which is kind of has been a big issue with these things, because of course because it's such a big box you put in front of your camera, it can easily vignette. You can easily get parts of the box into your image if you use a wider lens. And now they've adjusted the design so you can actually use up to 28 millimeters, which is relatively wide, of course, with this, which is great. So that is gonna ship soonish, I think, and it's priced at around £1,500, 1,700 euros, or about $2,000 and can be ordered directly from PrimeLight Design or through authorized retailers. So yeah, can really recommend the predecessor. So I'm sure the new version is great as well. You just have to take care of the glass because it's actual glass. So I wouldn't check that when you fly somewhere, because it can break. So just be careful with that. But it is properly padded and comes in a Peli case when you order this. But yeah, really, really cool device. That's a new version. Now let's move on to Tilta. Now Tilta just announced an XL version of their Tilta Boulder camera card. Now if you remember, I actually did an interview, I think that was at IBC last year, about Tilta entering the market for those camera cards, which is of course something that has been dominated by manufacturers like Innovative in the past, which it traditionally has been quite of a pricey thing. Like buying one of those cards can easily set you back $5,000-$10,000 or more. They are really made for on-set use, to put camera gear on, to not tip over when you just put a tripod head on one side with a platform and so on. And it's also been a niche that has been dominated by companies like Innovative that have really been focused on only doing that. And now Tilta entering this space, of course, offering much more affordable versions of this. I think Small Rig also started entering this space, and there's a lot of options for that. You can get umbrellas, you can get various mounts for different stuff on the side and so on. So after the first products, they now introduced an XL version of this, which is a more heavy-duty table, and it supports up to 500 kilograms of gear on it, which is around 1,100 pounds. So quite significant. You can put very heavy cameras, a lot of lenses, batteries, all of that onto that. Very useful on set, of course, if you need to move around a location and also a studio. It's very nice to have. Also, DITs love to use these things. They typically also fold down into relatively small packages, so you can load them into a car. They have very sturdy wheels. And the size of this, when it's kind of like when it's expanded, the maximum dimension of this of the XL card is 1,500, almost like 1,400 millimeters. That's 1.4 meters, or 56 inches long, 775 millimeters wide. So like 3/4 of a meter. And or 30 inches, and then a meter high actually, and 40 inches high. So this is quite a big one compared to the normal one, which is about 400 millimeters, almost half a meter actually shorter. And that's a very large card if you compare the setup here. It also gains 2 more wheels, so the XL version seems to have 6 wheels as opposed to 4 wheels, and it's 10-inch wheels as opposed to 9-inch wheels. So I think they did probably a very good job of making sure that it doesn't tip over when you put a lot of stuff onto it. And there's different brackets, of course. So, for example, here a monitor and wireless video mounting bracket, and tons of other accessories that I covered in that video interview at IBC. So go check it out. In terms of pricing, it will set you back around $1,600, which is incredibly affordable compared to a lot of the existing options in the market, like from Innovative cards. So very, very cool. Something we actually should have here in the studio. It'd be quite useful to move stuff across the hallway here. All right. Let's move on to actually a bit away from gear news. I want to talk about a educational article from our dear Masha Dekova, who's always covering the MZ education articles and the new courses, of course. And this week or last week, she actually wrote about the call to adventure in different films and how characters refuse to hear it. Now, this is something which is kind of a common thing in most movies. Like in a lot of adventure movies, like Harry Potter or whatever, Matrix and so on, and also science fiction, there is a call to action for the main protagonist. The interesting thing, what kind of creates tension, is having this main character say no to that call to adventure at the beginning. And there's different reasons for that. Either it's out of fear, or there's another kind of resistance why they don't want to don't want to fall that call for adventure initially. Or, like they have some people who are holding them back, like in Harry Potter, of course, it's his aunt and uncle and so on. And she's really analyzing that and how that is a common thing in a lot of movies. And this is all down to, like we have a course on MZ, Writing 201. That's the second part. There's also Writing 101. Writing 201 from writer-director Seth Worley. That's one of the courses I can really highly recommend if you're into screenwriting. And he's analyzing this quite a lot. And he's looking at that hero's journey and how that is really a skeleton framework that you can follow for a lot of screenplays, and specifically that technique of actually, like how does the hero follow their call to action? How do they resist it at first, and how that actually creates tension for your script? So really worth looking into, really worth reading. This article also has a lot of movie examples from Star Wars and Matrix and Lord of the Rings, which kind of all follow that same principle, which in different ways. So I can just recommend this article. Link is in the show notes. It's called Call to Adventure in Different Films and How Characters Refuse to Hear It. And moving on back to gear, there's actually that got quite a bit of interest on our Instagram and Facebook. Now, there's a company called CINELUX that introduced a new product, which is a focal reducer specifically for RED DSMC2 cameras, and it's called the REDUXA R2. Now, you might be surprised why they are actually releasing a focal reducer for DSMC2 cameras now, which is, of course, a series of cameras that has been discontinued by RED. They are on the DSMC3, and but there's still a lot of people who use DSMC2 cameras from RED. They are very popular still, also on secondhand market. You can get them for next to nothing, honestly, if you're interested in shooting on a RED. The resale value of RED cameras is not great because they've reduced the prices so often in the past that they are relatively affordable to get. Now, this focal reducer is similar to what you know probably from Metabones. The Metabones focal reducers are quite well known for different mounts and different camera manufacturers. The interesting thing about this one is that it was specifically designed for this type of RED camera, which has a couple of advantages. First of all, there's a very nice video of them explaining everything. First of all, this was really made for the RED camera, so I think as far as they are telling us, this is the first focal reducer which has kind of the focal setting. You can really change the setting of it and adjust the back focus perfectly to your camera through an integrated gear ring at the back. So usually those Metabones speed boosters are kind of factory set, but of course there's a little bit of a difference between each camera, so you cannot do any fine adjustments with this. But first of all, the optic that they're using is a 0.71 focal reduction, and it's the optic that they're using is made by Viltrox. They're explaining quite interestingly in the video that it's made by Viltrox because the Viltrox made one is actually allowing them to center it perfectly on top of the sensor as opposed to the Metabones one, which would be a little bit off center, which of course would have some implications with radial bokeh and kind of typical optical aberrations that happen on the corner of the image. So with the Viltrox one, they're able to actually perfectly place it in the middle. They say it's using the same optics. It just uses a different housing, which is less metal, which allows them to actually perfectly center it around that sensor. Now, of course, the focal reducer effectively makes a super 35 millimeter sensor and blows up the image with this 0.71 magnification to a full frame image. And by that, you also gain one stop of light. So it's kind of like two advantages at once, because it's really funneling that additional light that the lens actually is able to capture, a full frame lens, into a super 35 image circle, which is what a focal reducer does. Now, the really interesting thing here is that these guys have also integrated an OLPF into the whole thing, which is of course something that's missing from the DSMC2 cameras. So really smart design. It's perfectly optimized to work with this focal reducer. So you're kind of like, catching two, what is the saying? Catching two cats with one stone? No, I'm very bad with these things. But, it's solving another problem at the same time, which I didn't even expect them to do. They also have a very nice calculator online where you can actually see the effect it will have on different cameras. So really, really cool. Kind of a niche product. Very surprising they came up with this, and you can tell that it's comes from passion and it comes from filmmakers, and that's why they're starting a Kickstarter campaign. I think it will start in early February, and depending on how many they will actually have for pre-orders, it will determine whether they will be able to actually produce it. That's of course I think it's a fair way of launching it, because they need a minimum order quantity in order to be able to, probably get the price from Viltrox that they've been offered for all those optical parts and so on. So, and then it's kind of unique. You have on top of the focal reducer, you have the OLPF and the manual calibration mechanism that is lacking from other focal reducers here. So pretty cool. In terms of pricing, the official retail price will be $1,800 for the PL version and $1,900 for the EF model. Only the EF model will have the electronics to communicate with the lens, so you can also set aperture and focus and stuff like that through the EF version, which is why it's $100 more expensive. So quite cool, quite interesting. It's always nice if you have a camera that's not so new anymore and it really gets a feature upgrade with something like this. Is always amazing to me. So big shout out to CINELUX for actually making this, and looking forward to user reports on how they find it. All right, let's move on to a little bit of AI news. Google announced that Veo 3.1, their latest video generative model, now gets an update to support a native vertical format, 4K upscaling, and enhanced character consistency. Now, for anybody who has worked with their models before, in general, most of the models actually don't support vertical video creation, which means you need to crop an already relatively low resolution image if you want a vertical video. So this way, now they're just basically supporting the native generation of vertical video. And they also improve the consistency, which is a common thing that a lot of people complain about with those generative AI video models, is that basically you want to have a character or a subject consistent throughout various shots. And it's been something that has been very difficult in the past, and it's now getting better with many of those models, where you can just basically say, I want to reuse that character from that into the next shot that I want to generate. So, which is kind of crucial for storytelling, of course. So that's possible now. And so also 4K resing is now possible, which is resolution option. Let me just look here. Yeah, so upscaling to 4K. They still say that the 1080p option is ideal for editing workflows. And I guess it's not really generating 4K, it's upscaling. So it's basically looking at that image and trying to upscale it without, kind of making weird artifacts. So a little bit like the Topaz AI upscaler that's out there. So it's not actually generating 4K, but it's like a built-in upscale mechanism. So it's interesting that it's there now. I guess in general, we'll see this year a lot of those manufacturers, of a lot of those generative video model makers work on the resolutions of these things just to get them more production usable, because that's still a dead giveaway of a lot of those things. If you look closely, like if you look at commercials which already are using quite a lot of generative AI video, if you look closely, the resolution still gives it away for me, on top of a lot of other things. By the way, I think this is a bit of a teaser. We will in February do an interview with somebody who's really an expert on finding and identifying fake AI videos. It's one I'm really looking forward to. I'm not going to give away the name yet, but it's one of the leading people in this industry to really identify what is a generative video and how you can identify it. So I'm really looking forward to that. So watch out for that episode in February. That's going to be very, very interesting. All right, let's move on to another bit of gear news. Now, Godox announced 2 new panels, LED panels. Those are RGB panels, the KNOWLED P600R Hard P4 and P1200R Hard P8. Now, those are hard panel lights which come with a multi-zone pixel control. So for example, the 1x1, that's the P600R Hard P4, very difficult name, that has 4 zones. They call it pixel areas, and you can control them independently of each other. So you can kind of combine different colors on that same panel at the same time. Why do you want that? Well, in order to achieve something like a gradient on, for example, your background. So far, you would have to use multiple panels to achieve that, of course, and set them to different colors, which of course makes them harder to program with DMX and so on. Now with this, you can program them to come up with rainbow effects or whatever you want. And the larger version, the P1200 Hard P8, has 8 pixels, so you can do even more at the same time. The CCT range is between 1800 and 10,000 Kelvin, which is kind of significant. And the cool thing is there's also an adjustable diffusion that comes with it. So you can just move that in front of the panels, and then you can change from the hard light that those panels offer to the soft light with like just by the flip of a little switch or turn a wheel and just seamlessly get to a soft light. Now, of course, with a diffusion that close to the source, it's never going to be as soft as using something like a big softbox or chimera in front with a distance in front of your LED. That's clear. But it is definitely very convenient to have the ability to change the softness of your light as you're shooting, and kind of adjust it as you go, and to a degree. So that's really cool. We've seen this technology also from other manufacturers, of course, over the last couple of years, and it's becoming more and more commonplace. But it's great to have this option integrated into your light. Now, both of those lights are gonna be available. We don't know exactly when yet. And I mean, actually the pricing is out. We have the KNOWLED P600R for around $2,300, and the KNOWLED P1200R Hard P8 is gonna cost around $3,900. So not exactly, they're not entry-level lights. They're really highly professional lights with a lot of different features, a very high CRI and TLCI value of 97 and 98 respectively for very good skin tones. So they really target the high end, and I think they've been doing a great job at innovating and bringing out new lights. So very cool. Let's move on to PolarPro. PolarPro announced this CineFlow filter, which is very interesting, I have to say. I mean, that is, if you look at how it's designed, it looks almost like a lens from, like the inserts you would need for whatever, like if you use goggles, like VR goggles with an optical, like if you're short-sighted or something, or just, glasses. And the interesting thing is that this CineFlow series of filters kind of fakes motion blur. So if you look at the video version of this, you can see it here, that you can just put this in front of your camera and it gives the illusion of motion blur, even in still images, of course, but also in video if you want to use it for that. And it's just like a streak, a light streak, and then half of your image or around half of the image is going to be sharp. Very, very cool effect. I like what PolarPro is doing in general with their new filters. And so that's another edition of their series of interesting effect filters. And this is going to set you back $100 for the 49mm version and $180 for the Helix variant. So very interesting. And two more things. I want to move on to the Ruko U11 Mini 4K pocket-sized drone, which is a 249 grams drone with a dedicated touchscreen controller. Now, if you look at this, it looks very similar to a DJI drone. We know that DJI currently suffers from the fact that cannot sell new products in the US. And a lot of people speculating what this drone actually is, if it's something rebranded from DJI, we don't know. It certainly looks very similar to their mini series drones. And also in terms of pricing, it's not so different. It's around $500. You can get it on Amazon. And it has a lot of the very similar features of a lot of DJI drones. It's made to kind of, go into this small pocket of entry-level drones that you basically can take with you anywhere. And with 249 grams, it literally flies below most regulations. Half-inch CMOS sensor, 48 megapixel sensor, also very similar to a lot of DJI drones in this space, and can shoot 4K 30 frames per second, 8K UHD photos, and you can also switch to vertical video. So that's out now. This is something you can definitely buy in the US if you are into buying a beginner drone. You can use this with your phone, the controller, or have the dedicated controller too, I think. And nothing you haven't heard about before from DJI, but now also available in the US. Okay, last but not least, I just want to mention that the Kickstarter campaign for Viltrox NexusFocus F1 has started, and this is an adapter we've been very excited about. We reported about from IBC because it effectively makes all your manual lenses into autofocus lenses. It taps into the autofocus capabilities of your camera. Now this is an E to PL adapter for now. I have to say that we have received the device. We have been reviewing it. We've run into a couple of issues. We've been in constant contact with the manufacturers about it. And I think a lot of it is down to software, which hasn't been quite ready. So we didn't feel it's fair to complete this review yet, but we're working on it. And it's simply, when it works, it's very impressive. We just have to, talk to them a little bit more to iron out some of the software issues. I think they've been working very, very hard behind the scenes to make it work. And once it starts shipping, that I'm very confident that it will be a very successful product, because it's also not very expensive. I think they had probably the super early bird kits are gone because they were like $700 with 2 motors, and then it's $800 after that. But for what you get, it's amazing, because if you can really make your manual lenses into autofocus lenses, tapping into the autofocus capabilities of your camera without using something like a LiDAR, it's simply amazing. And we'll see how we progress with that review, but we'll keep you posted. And with that, I'm losing my voice, and I want to close this 100th episode of the CineD Focus Check podcast. Unfortunately, Johnny is not here anymore, but we'll be back next week. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume this podcast. Don't forget to drop us an email at podcast@cined.com if you have any questions or remarks that you want us to talk about on one of the next episodes, or leave a comment on YouTube. And see you next week. Bye.